Hey everyone, so today I want to talk about Bitcoin and where I think this market could go here over the next few weeks. I'll also talk about where I'm interested in buying, whether we get that move lower or higher first. Okay, so looking at the weekly time frame, this is how I like to start out because it gives us a good foundation of where this market has been and where it could go here over the short term. So you can see where back here, these were the bear market lows. All right, and this right here was the peak from the last cycle. So what's interesting about this, and I don't see anybody else talking about this channel, but this right here is an equidistant channel. So if you take a level and connect it with these lows down here, and then also connect it with this high, all right, an equidistant level, you get an area that was tested down here at 30,000. All right, so this is really interesting to me because this has kind of formed the base of the entire year of consolidation. And that brings me to my next point. So a lot of people are talking about certain trend lines where if we break this trend line, then it's a bear market, etc. But what's important to understand is that 2021 has really just been a year of consolidation. So, the market opened back here in 2021, all right, through this area. And you can see where since that time, we've really just gotten a ranging market. Okay, so it is still up on the year, but all in all, guys, this is a sideways market. So anybody talking about whether we, if we lose this trend line, then the bull market's over, etc. I really think that that's very misleading because this is all just consolidation following this breakout back here. Okay, so we had the breakout and now we're just getting consolidation. Now, speaking of trend lines, what I see a lot of people doing on Twitter, and I want to clear this up because it's really important, is that they draw a trend line from some of these lows down here. And they say, okay, if we lose this trend line, then the bull market's over. Or maybe we already did lose it and they're saying bull market's over. My issue with that is, first of all, trend lines are very, very subjective. Secondly, if we were to extend this up, because I've talked about the idea of lengthening cycles in the past. I know Ben has over it into the cryptoverse as well. I'm a fan of that idea simply because every cycle has gotten longer so far. And it also makes sense that if it takes more capital to push Bitcoin higher, that it would also take more time for that capital to enter the market. So if we just kind of assume for a second that this cycle could extend into late 2022, okay, what's interesting about that is that, people say, well, if we lose a trend line like this, that we're just going to see Bitcoin do this down toward 20,000. And I tend to disagree with that just because I've seen far too many times where a market breaks a trend line like this and you get some initial weakness. Okay, so maybe back down to 40, maybe even down to 35, but then it just does this, all right, and grinds higher, takes out these highs back here. And if you'll notice, a trend line like this, if we look toward the end of 2022, comes in around $170,000. So nobody would complain here if we got something like this from Bitcoin into 2022. Now, I'm not saying that this will happen, but I am saying that, Bitcoin could break a trend line like this and still be very, very bullish over the next 6 to 12 months. So you have to be careful looking at a single level and saying that, this level, like basically the entire bull market hinges on this one level. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at the daily time frame and see what Bitcoin is dealing with here. And I talked about this in yesterday's newsletter, but you can see where we have a trend line off of the April high. And so far, this level is serving as support. Now, we also have a trend line, a descending trend line as well, off of the high up here at 69,000. And this is going to be the level to break right now. All right. Now, this creates a terminal pattern where Bitcoin is approaching the apex that does end sometime in December. So the apex of this is in late December. And what that means is that Bitcoin has to break out either one way or the other this month. Okay, now what I'm watching for on the bullish side, if we do get a break higher from this, is maybe some more consolidation, maybe a retest of support again, and then we get that push higher into early January, reclaim 53, and then on to 60,000, 70,000, etc. That's the bullish scenario. So for me, I would be watching for a break above this trend line here. All right, that would be number one. And then number two would be a reclaim of 53. So 53 is going to be the big level that Bitcoin has to get back above on a daily closing basis to turn bullish again. So reclaim 53, I think we see 60,000 and also 70. Now, alternatively, if we were to lose this level down here, all right, this April trend line, and push below this level, then there's a chance we get a fill of this December 4th candle, this December 4th wick. Okay, so if we were to see Bitcoin fill that wick down toward 42, maybe 40, then this is also where I would be a buyer. So basically the two scenarios where I'd be a buyer would be a retest of 40,000 down here or a reclaim of 53. Now, I'm not opposed to the idea of a move below 40,000. I know a lot of people are saying if Bitcoin drops below 40, then, it's very bearish, etc. Like I said, I don't necessarily believe that just because, yes, we would lose this low back here. Okay, so you want to see higher highs and higher lows. And I get that you wouldn't want to see the market close below 40,000. However, even if we got a retest of 35, you have to understand that, back here too, you could have said the same thing, right? So we had this swing low, we had this high, this low, and this high. And then all of a sudden, the market started to carve lower highs and lower lows through this period. And it then took out this low back here. Okay, so you could have said that back here too, that when it closed below this, that, bull market's over and Bitcoin is headed back toward 20,000. That's what a lot of people thought. But instead, we got a new all-time high. So clearly that wasn't the case. And to me, I see 40,000 as a very similar situation where, I would like to see it hold above 40,000, but if it doesn't and breaks below this area, then to me it would be very similar to when Bitcoin broke back here. Okay, so we could see a break below it. Maybe it moved down here into 35, potentially into the 30 area, and then we get a bounce from there, just like we saw back in here. All right, so I think it's very dangerous to look at a single level and just assume that the entire bull market is going to hinge on that one level. I think that's very naive, especially considering what we've seen throughout the entire year with Bitcoin just going sideways. Okay, so with that in mind, there is one thing I want to point out. So just to recap too before we go on, basically I'm looking to buy if we get a move down here into 40.42 to fill in this wick. All right, so just kind of a slow churn down here to this area. I'd be a buyer down here, or if we get a reclaim of this trend line, and especially 53. 53 is going to be the big one. Okay, now one thing I do want to point out is the potential for this period right now to play out similarly to what we had back here. So this right here was the end of the accumulation phase where Bitcoin tested the low down here right around 29,000. Now, the reason I say it could be similar is if we look at the, let's say, 4-hour time frame. So if you'll notice what's happening right now, we're just kind of getting this slow grind lower. We're having these lower highs and lower lows. And this level right here is the April trend line. So you can see how so far it's serving as support, right? So we had this wick below it, but Bitcoin closed back above it. Once again, here, support, support, and support again. But we're just getting this slow grind lower here, and there's no real sign of a reversal yet. Now, if we look back here at the period where Bitcoin tested 29,000, to me, it looks very similar. Okay, so if we move back here, this was back in July when we got this move lower, and once again, slow grind lower into 29,000, and then that ended up marking the bottom. Okay, so what's interesting here is if we do take a fractal from this period, so from this high up here to, let's say, here, and move this over on top of the current price action, you'll notice that it is quite similar. Okay, it's not exact. No fractal is going to be exact. And for the record, I don't really love the idea of fractals. I think that, a lot of times they're kind of built to fail. But in this case, I think it's interesting just because you can see that we're getting the same exact type of ranging motion here. And once again, that slow grind lower. Now, this would have the market breaking below the April trend line, all right, and actually retesting 40,000. So if we saw it play out similarly, you can see here where toward the end of the year, we would get a test down here around 40 to 42. Now, that obviously assumes that this plays out similar to what we saw back here, all right, in July. So if we did see Bitcoin just continue to play out this way, like it did here in July, then, once again, this kind of confirms that 40 to 42 is the area to watch. So as I said, I will be a buyer if we do get those prices. So if we do get that break below the April trend line, move down here into 40.42, fill in this wick, I think that would be a great area to buy. Not financial advice, of course, but that is what I'll be doing. So all in all, we'll just have to wait and see how this plays out. I do think there's a good chance that we do see something similar to this. Maybe not exact, but I think a slow churn during the rest of December makes a lot of sense just because everybody was so bullish coming into this month. And, when you think about max Payne theory, which basically says that, in a roundabout way, the market's going to do the opposite of what most expect. And there are a ton of call option strike prices above 50,000, especially 53, so basically above this area for December. And max Payne theory says that the market is most likely going to stay below that area throughout the rest of December to cause max Payne, right? So, it kind of plays into it as well, where I think we're just going to get this churn sideways, maybe even lower below this area, fill in this area down here around 40, and then from there, we'll look to see if we can get that bounce, reclaim these trend lines, and then also reclaim 53. Okay, but bottom line for the short term, guys, Bitcoin is really just a sideways market. Everything from 53 all the way down to 40, everything in between here is fair game. It's a sideways market. So the idea here is try not to get chopped up. Look to the lows for a potential buying opportunity. It doesn't mean we'll get it, but if we don't, then you always have a reclaim of 53 to look to. All right, and that's what I'll be doing. So I hope that this has helped, guys. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave your comment below, and I'll talk to you guys soon.